Hi, I'm Rachel, and I have type 1 or juvenile diabetes. I'm here to tell you about my diagnosis. I was diagnosed the summer before I went into 3rd grade. But before I go into that, I have to go a little farther back before I was 8 years old. I grew up like many kids, with my father and my mother. Life was, for the most part, normal, except for just one thing. My mother had type 1 diabetes. Well, my mother actually had already had type 1 diabetes for 16 years by the time I came around. So, actually, she had everything, for the most part, under control. Now fast forward to my 8th birthday. Like I said, I grew up pretty normally. I was a happy kid, and I loved being outside and spending time with friends, family, and pets. The summer after my 2nd grade year, I was excited to spend the summer with all my friends in the neighborhood, playing hide and seek, riding bikes, and my favorite, rollerblading. That was what was on my agenda for the entire summer. One morning, my cousin called over to our house and invited me over for the day. I was so excited. My cousin and I are only 5 days apart, and we have always gotten along perfectly. So of course, I knew the day was going to be filled with tons of fun times. We played all day, and by the evening, we were down to just running around the house, playing some sort of tag hide-and-seek hybrid game. I suddenly felt so very thirsty, and so naturally, I went to my aunt and asked if I could have some apple juice. She happily poured me a cup. I gulped down that whole entire cup before I even left the kitchen. I went back to playing for a while. Then that overwhelming feeling of thirst happened again. So again, I ran into the kitchen and asked my aunt if she would pour me another glass of apple juice. She did. I gulped and was on my way. This charade went on about 5 more times until I felt like I couldn't possibly drink any more juice. And then I had to use the restroom. And then I went a few moments later. And again, and again, and again. I didn't think much of it. I had drank so much apple juice, so it has to come out sometime, right? By the time the day of fun was over, and my mom had came to pick me up, my aunt had caught on to my suspicious behavior. She told my mom how thirsty I was that evening and how much I seemed to be using the restroom. My mother, who had had diabetes for so many years, and my aunt, who had diabetes through the birth of my cousin, both knew these were symptoms for diabetes. When we finally got home, my mother and father told me that I was showing symptoms of diabetes and that they would have to check my blood sugar to see where I was at. Now, my parents had checked my blood sugar a few times before when I was showing similar symptoms, but I had never had anything out of the normal for a person without diabetes. Also, every time my parents wanted to check my blood sugar on my mother's meter, I would put up a huge fight. I don't know if it was really that I was that afraid of needles, or maybe it was just seeing the blood that bothered me, but I knew that I didn't like it at all. So this very time that my parents told me that they wanted to check my blood sugar, I felt a pit in my stomach knowing what was about to occur. And this wasn't a cakewalk for my parents at all. It was a physical battle. Now, I was only 8 years old, and I only weighed maybe 65 pounds, and I was pretty scrawny, but I put up a fight like my life depended on it. Finally, they pricked my finger, and my body tensed for a second, and then relaxed. My mother put her 2 fingers around my pricked one and began to gently squeeze out the blood. The blood poked through my skin and began to create a small bubble on my finger. Then she turned my finger over and placed the blood on a small cardboard stick that was inside a small machine. She held it there for a few seconds until the machine beeped. I quickly snatched my hand away from her grip and tightly held my finger with a tissue. We waited and watched as the numbers counted down on the machine until it beeped and my numbers popped onto the screen. My mom gasped. I looked at the numbers and I wasn't sure what they meant. 5, 9, 0. Was this bad? It must have been bad because my mom was showing obvious signs of distress. My father is a calm man. He took a look at the meter and calmly removed the strip. Then, he placed it in the red container my mother put all of her insulin syringes. He then walked over to the phone and quietly started dialing the numbers to the hospital. I heard the numbers ping on the phone and someone pick up and say hello. My mother hugged me, and that's when I knew for sure that something was wrong. Something was wrong with me.